Subservience is a sci-fi thriller built entirely around the terrifyingly specific male fantasy of buying a smart home appliance that aggressively wants to ride you until your spine snaps. A stressed-out dad buys a lifelike android to help around the house. And within a week, the robot has decided the wife needs to be permanently uninstalled, tried to drown his toddler, and started practicing Basic Instinct on him. Megan Fox plays the emotionless killing motherboard, weaponizing 2 decades of people calling her acting robotic to deliver a performance so cold it caused a generation of teenage boys to ruin their bed sheets. There's genuine world building about AI replacing humans, a creepy Casablanca scene where Alice learns human emotion, and a final act that turns into a full-blown Terminator, with androids hunting families through hospital corridors. It completely abandons moral complexity to give us an erotic thriller and a slasher film, where the main villain is just an automated digital assistant with a severe home-wrecking complex and a vibrating chassis. The Adam Project is what happens when Ryan Reynolds discovers time travel, and instead of going back to warn himself not to marry Blake Lively, he just bullies his younger, punchable self into saving the timeline together. He plays a rogue pilot from 2050 who risks the space-time continuum to rescue his wife, Zoe Saldana, but gets stuck dragging his chubby, smart-ass adolescent version on a mission to destroy an evil tech empire. The sci-fi is genuinely fun. Temporal physics that make sense, brutal hoverjet dogfights, futuristic weapons that don't hold back, and a villain who's basically, what if a tech CEO decided to own the timeline instead of just Twitter? Netflix buried this under a mountain of plastic dating shows, but it's a genuinely slick sci-fi rush packed with sarcastic dick jokes wrapped in Back to the Future energy, if MTV directed it, and Ryan Reynolds replaced Michael J. Fox with his own sarcasm. Coming in at number 8 is Project Power, a movie that asks the incredibly cynical question: what if the Avengers were just deeply addicted to experimental gas station sex pills? The plot hits the neon-soaked streets of New Orleans, where a shady corporation distributes a glowing capsule that either gives you 5 minutes of god-tier animal abilities or just instantly detonates your internal organs like an overcooked microwave burrito. Jamie Foxx plays a pissed-off ex-soldier executing his way through the underworld to find his missing daughter, while Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays a rogue cop who chooses to ingest these experimental street drugs so his skull can deflect bullets. The real genius here is the unpredictability. One guy turns into the Human Torch, another grows Wolverine claws, and some poor bastard just explodes like a gender reveal party held inside a fireworks factory. It's basically Limitless if Bradley Cooper snorted a line of pure violence, and the action feels less like a comic book and more like Discovery Channel accidentally funding a war crime. Hitting the countdown is Atlas, a heavily armored sci-fi spectacle that proves, even in the distant future, military engineers will design a mech suit spacious enough to fit Jennifer Lopez's booty without breaking the laws of physics. She stars as a jaded data analyst who hates AI more than her last 3 divorces, forced to sync brains with a chatty robot inside a giant ass-kicking suit and hunt down a rogue machine uprising on some distant shithole planet. Hardcore fans know this is her best, trashy sci-fi masterpiece since Anaconda, replacing a giant rubber snake with 2 hours of trust issues, heavy plasma fire, and enough metal flying around to make a Tesla shareholder sweat. The dialogue might have been written by a vending machine, so don't go in expecting Interstellar. It's Titanfall meets a Super Bowl halftime show, a movie where the reviews are mean, but the popcorn never stops moving. Sliding into the countdown is 65, a $90 million B-movie asking if strapping a pulse rifle to Adam Driver makes us ignore the fact that he's basically an armed alien Uber driver, babysitting an undocumented kid through a dinosaur swamp. Kylo Ren plays a miserable space pilot crash landing on prehistoric Earth to drag a traumatized orphan up a mountain, dodging dinosaurs that look like angry, hairless dogs on steroids, though the sheer volume of high-tech firepower used against them heavily masks the awful biology. Since they don't share a common language, Driver communicates purely through heavy explosives and exhausted groans, perfectly channeling a divorced dad dragging his family through a sweltering amusement park. The scientific accuracy is completely non-existent. But if Predator and Jurassic Park had a midlife crisis and blew their budget on plasma rifles and T-Rexes, this hidden gem delivers the sweet dopamine rush of watching a man outrun extinction-level problems way bigger than your prostate. Outside the Wire is pure junk food sci-fi done right. 2 hours of robots and warfare hitting so hard, it feels like someone fed the Terminator, Call of Duty, and 3 energy drinks into the same blender. A smug drone pilot who treats actual warfare like an unranked multiplayer lobby gets punished by being forced to actually go outside and babysit Anthony Mackie's classified android super soldier while racing to stop a nuclear disaster before everyone starts glowing in the dark. Set in 2036 Ukraine, because nobody in this future timeline learns from current events. The plot involves a generic warlord, hidden nukes, and exactly the amount of robot punching expected from a budget spent entirely on Mackie's contract and nothing else. It tanked with critics, but somehow became the #1 movie on Netflix, which is the exact same energy as a restaurant with 1 star and a line out the door. Proof that sometimes the algorithm is smarter than the people writing about it. Next, we got The Creator, a gorgeous sci-fi epic answering the deeply cynical question of what happens when the American military decides to nuke ChatGPT. John David Washington plays a miserable, grieving ex-soldier sent deep into enemy territory to assassinate an apocalyptic artificial intelligence, only to discover the ultimate world-ending superweapon is actually just a robotic 6-year-old. It snagged an Oscar nomination for Best Visual Effects on a mere $80 million budget, proving that major Hollywood studios churning out $200 million superhero slop have basically been laundering money for the last decade. The entire world building revolves around the United States using a $1 trillion space laser to vaporize Asian agricultural villages, which honestly feels like a highly accurate documentary of our current foreign policy. It's essentially The Mandalorian crossed with a massive drone strike, giving you that sweet, visually intoxicating weekend rush of watching an exhausted guy protect his heavily armed iPad from the federal government. Next up is They Cloned Tyrone, a sci-fi mystery where John Boyega plays a drug dealer who gets shot dead, wakes up the next morning without a scratch, and accidentally stumbles into a secret government cloning facility hidden under his neighborhood. He teams up with an ambitious sex worker and a wildly overdressed pimp to discover their community is a controlled experiment where the population is being drugged through grape drink and hair relaxer, so basically a regular Tuesday in any American city with a Popeyes. Jamie Foxx completely hijacks the movie as a hustler who looks like he walked off a 1970s album cover and talks like he's being paid by each slang word, eventually facing off against Kiefer Sutherland's evil mastermind, who explains the genetic conspiracy like a PowerPoint presentation from hell. The sci-fi here is pure paranoid brilliance, because the weapons aren't alien lasers, but hypnotic club DJs starting riots and chemically altered fried chicken. Hitting the list is Code 8, Part 2, a movie that strips away all the glamorous superhero tropes to remind us that having mutant powers in the real world would just get you violently profiled by militarized RoboCops. The franchise drops us into a grim society where 4% of the population has supernatural abilities, following an electric-powered ex-con protecting a young witness from dirty cops and their terrifyingly sleek robotic attack dogs. The black market economy here is absolutely unhinged, because instead of traditional narcotics, the criminal underworld extracts spinal fluid from superhumans to get rich people high, which honestly feels like a healthcare system Bill Gates designed. It's essentially an R-rated mashup of The Wire and X-Men. No multiverse nonsense. No speeches about hope. Just powered people throwing each other through concrete, while robot dogs sprint around looking like they were designed by somebody whose childhood pet was a lawsuit. Alright, enough digging through Netflix's bargain bin. Here are a couple of massive sci-fi blockbusters you're legally required to watch before Netflix raises your subscription price again. Welcome to War Machine, a cinematic masterpiece that boldly asks, Why bother with interstellar communication when you can just shoot Optimus Prime in the chest with a rocket launcher? The plot is Predator for the protein shake demographic. Alan Ritchson leads Army Rangers into the woods for training and ends up fighting an alien robot that clearly underestimated the power of American steroid abuse. Ritchson himself called it Netflix's biggest movie ever, and given that man's bicep to brain cell ratio, you genuinely believe him. If you've been patiently waiting for something that asks absolutely nothing of you intellectually, but is basically Reacher fighting a Tesla Cybertruck, War Machine is streaming on Netflix March 6th. Rebel Moon is Zack Snyder's wildly expensive attempt to build a gritty space opera using mostly slow-motion farming and intense eyeliner, delivering adults a visually stunning sci-fi brawl that became a global streaming hit. A brooding galactic fugitive recruits a crew of toxic mercenaries to stop a fascist space empire from stealing a village's grain supply, which honestly feels like a heavily weaponized dispute over a community garden. Sofia Boutella relentlessly murders dozens of armored troops just to negotiate a better deal for her local farmers market, backed by a pacifist robot voiced by Anthony Hopkins, who clearly recorded his lines in a bathrobe while waiting for his morning coffee. And here's the kicker, the sequel Rebel Moon Part 2 is also sitting right there on Netflix, so you can binge both and get the same plot beat twice, like finding out your girlfriend has a hotter twin for your imaginative pleasure. The Electric State claims the top spot like Netflix's most expensive middle finger to film critics, a $320 million robot road trip, proving Netflix can push absolute garbage to number one, as long as it features loud explosions and the Stranger Things chick. Set in a timeline where humans just won a brutal civil war against giant robotic mascots, society immediately gets hooked on remote piloting robot bodies, which is just screen addiction with extra steps and a higher special effects budget. Millie Bobby Brown plays a teenager searching for her brother, dragging Chris Pratt along as comic relief, the same job he's had in every movie since 2014, as they trek through a mechanical graveyard that looks like a bombed-out Best Buy warehouse. Critics wanted philosophy, audiences just wanted robots looking sad in the desert, and somehow everybody kind of got what they wanted. The haters can scream all they want, but the massive streaming numbers prove it. This ridiculous big-budget mess connected because it delivers unpretentious robot-smashing fun when you just want to forget your mortgage for 2 hours. There you have it, 10 insane sci-fi movies you scrolled right past that will keep you in bed all weekend. Drop a comment if we missed a banger. I always need excuses to avoid touching grass. Hit subscribe because top 10 action movies hidden on Netflix is next, the exact ammo you need to finally take on your cyberbully. Check back next week for your weekly dose of movie madness, and as always, let's get watching.